We're going to get started. So I encourage participants to come forward to your seats and so we can get going. Bharat, is it ready? Okay, good. Our next speaker, our next session title is actually 6G Security by Dr. Ejaz Ahmed. He's actually joining from Finland. Um, Dr. Ejaz is a senior scientist at the VTT Technical Research Center of Finland and is an adjunct professor at the University of Oulu, Finland. Dr. Ejaz has published over 50 research articles on different topics in security of wireless networks and published an edited book on security of 5G wireless networks. Dr. Ejaz has been a visiting scientist at the Technical University of Vienna, Austria, 2019, and at the Aalto University, Finland, 2018, and is a recipient of several awards, including the Nokia Foundation, Tono Toning, and Jarmo Ollila Grant Awards, and the VTT Research Excellence Awards for 2020, 2021, and 2023. Furthermore, Dr. Ejaz has received 2 Best Paper Award at IEEE conference for his work on network security. His research interests include cybersecurity and security of 5G and 6G. Dr. Ejaz, it's an extreme pleasure to have you. I hope you can able to share your screen and continue your session.
Hello, thank you. So I would like to confirm that, do you hear me? Can you hear me? So how can I be sure that you hear me? So hello? Okay, great. Now I can see. Yeah, now I can see from the chat that you can hear me. So thank you for giving this opportunity to talk to you about security of 6G. I call it like security in the times of 6G. Because it is still pretty far away, but how do we go to that? So yeah, I'm Ejaz. I work at VTT Technical Research Center of Finland as a senior scientist, and I'm also a adjunct professor at the University of Oulu. So I'll talk about security of 5G mainly from the historical perspective. It will be a brief history from 1G to 5G, and then I'll talk about the security challenges within 5G, and then security in the times of 6G. It will be 6G roadmap, just a very brief one, and then what will 6G be, and what will be the roadmap of 6G security, and then I will conclude with also provide some references. So security of 5G. In the 1G time, there was practically no security. So it was kind of enabling mobile-to-mobile communications, but people didn't think of security much. So there were very clear security challenges, eavesdropping and call interception, and there were no privacy mechanisms at all. And in 2G, then there were message spamming and unwanted broadcasting, even though there were some security mechanisms were introduced like authentication and anonymity and some encryption-based protection. And also there were fake base stations, and the radio link security was very weak. So in 3G, it adopted the 2G security mechanisms, provided some secure access to network, and introduced this AKA protocol for two-way authentication. But IP security kind of got into the wireless domain, the cellular domain mainly. So now there were new kinds of security threats. Then we go to 4G. It brought us higher bandwidth and much more services, but it also had then increased the security challenges from the internet. 4G also improved the security of 3G, so introducing new encryption technologies and trust mechanisms. But with the introduction of IP-based traffic, the certain types of new attacks, DOS attacks, kind of got into the wireless domains. And there were then security challenges in the base stations and eavesdropping on long-term keys. And clearly, we saw that those will not be good for 5G, because 5G kind of went beyond, and we have then connected some of our home appliances and other things with the wireless networks. So the security threat landscape increased, even though it can be very now easily said that 5G is the most secure of all the cellular networks we have seen so far. But there are now critical infrastructures also connected through the 5G. So the overall, the threat landscape increases. The threat landscape increased also mainly due to new technologies connected or integrated into the 5G ecosystems. Some of the new concepts were like cloudification, even though clouds existed before 5G, but its introduction happened very much in the 5G times. Then there was softwareization, the introduction of the concepts of this software-defined networking in cellular networks. It opened a lot of opportunities for improving innovation and communication networks, but it also introduced new kind of challenges. Also, virtualization was introduced, network function virtualization, and new mechanisms for integrating a lot of IoTs. So there was this IoT kind of boom, that there will be a lot of IoT devices integrated, and that the infrastructure is kind of pretty much paved for the introduction of IoT devices. New concepts that may be new into the from the computing perspectives, but they were definitely new in the cellular networks perspectives. For example, the smart city, smart devices, smart mobility, etc. Those also now kind of to be provided through the communication networks. So what happened was that the security challenges related to each of these technologies kind of moved into the 5G domain. For example, in the clouds, the important control entities of the network, they're moved to the cloud platforms. And user information and user data also got stored in the cloud infrastructures. So when you put the control in the cloud infrastructure, you kind of centralize the control into some specific locations, exposing it to security challenges. SDN, it was mainly introduced within the transport network, and it also, when we talk about softwareization, so the SDN concepts were mainly the ones which drove this softwareization of communication networks. So in SDN, you have centralized control points, SDN controllers, and then also open interfaces and third-party applications. So when you centralize the control points through introducing software-defined networking, you kind of open the make certain points very clear attraction for attacks. So that's what kind of happened with the SDN. And with virtualization, so we could create slices and virtual instances for different services, but also the virtualization also had its own kind of challenges. For example, the hypervisors creation and those that also happen from centralized points, and they're also a kind of one target of attack for security threats. With the IoT, it's very interesting that IoT is very, very important, and we need a lot of IoT devices. But one challenge is that how do we recognize legitimate traffic if there are a lot of IoT devices kind of start to send traffic at once? How to recognize it and differentiate from this kind of flash from this DOS attacks if there is a flash network traffic. So it also further kind of increased the overall security threat landscape. If you see in the figure, so this is kind of a visualized situation of what could happen. So in 4G, there were these fake base station challenge. It was pretty high. In 5G, it was minimized, but still when you introduce a lot of IoT devices and you think that, okay, yeah, the existing cellular networks may be enough, but most of the IoT devices, they support low range communications where you need to have your own base station. And in such situations, the fake base station again comes to the play. So that's one kind of challenge. And of course, there are the other threats when you put user information in clouds. There are then privacy challenges to the user information. And in this way, there are a lot of challenges when we centralize the control network entities. We open the space to DOS attacks. This is another visualization of how and where the challenges can happen. So in the downside, the user environment here. So there we try to kind of map the attacks where these attacks could happen. So here is the main attacks: illegal intercept, DOS attacks, flash traffic, privacy breaches, fake base stations, slice resource theft, and threats originating from the internet and security policy conflicts. So these all are numbered here to is like DOS attack. So when we have these network entities, clearly the network functions clearly centralized. So we invite more kind of attacks. And with the SDN concept, I would like to give one visualization is that a description is that the data plane is relying on the control plane. So the data plane traffic from the data plane to the control plane, it can be recognized by various means. One is the timestamps with each packet. So that's different between when the data plane to data plane communication happens and when it happens between a controller and a data plane. So from there have been studies where they could fingerprint that where is the controller located and then directing some unsolicited kind of flows towards the data plane, and then the data plane forwards it to the controller, and that's how the DOS attacks could be generated. So these were the kind of security challenges are there still in the 5G landscape. But of course, there are also then the solutions are also not so kind of challenging at this moment, because for each of these challenges, there have been solutions already developed. the hierarchical solutions for the SDN and NFV concepts, that we don't have one controller, the separation of the control plane and the data plane in SDN, it's more of a kind of a logical centralization of the control plane, not the physical. So there are various concepts for those, and pretty much those are also now interestingly covered. This mobile edge computing, now that the mobile edge computing is pretty much decentralized, kind of it provides decentralized location for some control entities. So it's also decentralizing the control units, and thus the chances of success of DOS attacks from making meaningful kind of problems is now pretty much minimized. The basic philosophy of the 5G, that how the security of 5G should be, it was like to be modular and service-based solution, technology and service-based solution, and those are mainly driven by the 3GPP, third generation partnership project standardization organization. So it can be claimed that 5G as a connectivity infrastructure is the most secure compared to the previous generations. Of course, there is one thought behind it, is that we learned from 1G to 2G and 3G and 4G, and it's kind of an evolutionary process where we stop the security attacks. So the design principles for the security have been like new use cases and new networking paradigms. They require supreme built-in security, and there we need to do like security by design for new emerging systems and services. There's a growing need for flexibility for new threats, so flexible security mechanisms we need. So flexibility can be achieved through, again, the concepts of SDN and NFV, and adding this dynamicity in placing network functions. And the growing need for dependability for the changing ecosystem, so automation, and that can be achieved using the AI to minimize human intervention. One interesting, there have been some studies that said that found out that most of the network downtime is due to human intervention. So if we minimize human intervention, we kind of minimize the chances for success of security attacks. Now, if you go towards 6G, that what will happen to security in the times of 6G. So first, this is from 3GPP, the evolution. So we think that the 6G networks will be available for use by 2030. So now it's the research work going on. We are still in the study and gathering the requirements, those phases. And the specifications will start at some point in 2026. So it's pretty early to kind of think on what 6G can be. So what we think is that what 6G should be, it should contribute to an efficient, human-friendly, and sustainable society through ever-present intelligent communication, and enable new applications such as XR and industrial connectivity through new technology like terahertz. We talk about sustainable society. The one challenge is that we are draining the resources on our planet, and ICT is contributing a lot to that. So the sustainability, it has been improved in 5G in terms of using less energy per base station, but the number of base stations, for example, in 5G has increased much more than that of 4G. So we are still on the negative side if we talk about sustainability in 5G. And in 6G, the number of devices are supposed to be even much more higher. So we definitely need to think about the sustainability aspects. So what then we think is that 6G needs to be highly distributed and decentralized in nature, much like a mesh of self-organized autonomous networks working in unison. Each self-organizing autonomous network will have network control in its own physical vicinity, therefore have localized security policies, procedures, and technologies to maintain the independent working status of the local network. I have some explanation for that, in the current systems, there are some limitations. What we see in the 3GPP based existing system, for example, the 5G, those are highly centralized. And when we talk about services, we talk about remote services, and like those services will work with kind of unnoticeable delay or latency. But we also have to keep in mind that there are some physical limitations if we consider the basics, very basics, and we go to the speed of light and the microwave, the speed is pretty much same as that of the speed of light, a bit less. But so in 50 kilometers area, we cannot achieve latency lower than 0.17 milliseconds. So even though we are studying, we are trying to meet new kind of needs, and to find that there are these services, they have very strict requirements in terms of latency, but we cannot go beyond certain physical limitations. The solution to those is that we go towards decentralized solution where there is like no such latency critical service, where its control must not be more than 50 kilometers away from where the service is provided. So the main point here is that we definitely need to go beyond the centralized systems which 5G have been so far. And as I discussed, there is a need for sustainable solutions, so that like the 5G new radio consumes less energy per gigabit compared to 4G, but the increased number of devices used a combined high amount of energy. So that's the reason we need to move toward distributed and decentralized solutions if we ignore the other ones. And we need to then define security policies for such distributed and decentralized scenarios. So in this figure, I describe, like, if we consider on the left side, so this is a typical kind of 5G network where there is this core network, centralized core network, then there is a backhaul network, and after the backhaul network, there are these base stations and the user environments. So if something happens in the user environment, mostly the security procedures, they lie in the core network. So those need to be contacted, and then there is this back and forth communication happening every time. So will those suffice for the new emerging services? On the right side, I consider this industrial environments and vehicular communications. In the vehicular communications, for example, if we think about the initial bootstrapping of applications, there is a lot of back and forth communication between the core network entities and the user device. So around 16 in the 3GPP. So if we consider that back and forth communication and that latency, which I described in the previous slide, so a lot of services kind of are out of the space, in that sense that we will not be able to meet the latency requirements. So what we need to do is that instead of having the functions in the core network here, we bring it to the user vicinities. So there is in my opinion the way ahead. But if we want to do that, it becomes extremely complicated. Extremely complicated in a sense that the current 5G network architecture is such that all the core network entities are extremely entangled with each other. For example, we cannot take the authentication function far away and leaving the other functions. For example, this policy charging or the mobility management functions. If we move one of them away, the back and forth communication between them is going to consume a lot of resources and further complicate the overall scenario. So we need to design distributed architectures in a way that first, that the kind of this back and forth communication is not consuming a lot of the spectrum and the bandwidth and other resources, and that we meet the requirements of the services without burdening the network beyond the current one. There are studies that the signaling information, the increase in the signaling information is much more than that of the increase in the data, the actual data. So that's what we have to also look into. So here I have some thoughts that the security architecture should be distributed in nature to meet the requirements, e.g. latency of future services such as authentication of moving vehicles or industrial systems. Industrial systems are extremely latency critical. They have very small kind of this cap for accepting the latency. So if we talk about those, we need the control network entities, the security entities really within the vicinity. Secure the network from the threats of AI, including inadvertent weaknesses and threats such as using non-integrity verified data. There is a lot of discussion and a lot of research happening on the use of AI for security, but what's happening is that also we kind of ignore the weaknesses of AI itself. One big challenge, I think that will be pretty much for quite some time, is that the integrity verification of data. Once the user is authenticated, then we don't do much with what he sends. So how do we do the integrity verification of authenticated users? So there's one challenge that's within the AI system. And of course, there are new kind of challenges coming. Secure all resources from the threats posed by quantum computing. There are initial proposals by the by various organizations, research organizations. They have proposed some quantum resistant cryptographic algorithms, but it's going to be a real challenge. Maybe not in the near term, but still, those who could have quantum computers, for example, state level actors, they may create problems. So, and the security system need to be sustainable. Emerging solutions based on AI will consume huge amounts of energy, memory, transceiver resources, spectrum, and energy resources. Another problem with this, with the persistence with AI, is that AI requires a lot of resources. If we talk about people kind of distribute the systems, they think that edge computing, we can deploy different kind of services based on AI, but the edge devices which are currently commercially available, they are very limited in terms of resources. So if they have to put some of the core network functions, then there will be a need for adding extra resources there for processing AI. So this is another challenge, that we do want to provide security, but how to kind of provide resources for performing those security functions, or security systems that are running those security systems. Another interesting area is distributed ledger technologies. They provide security in untrusted environments. However, distributed these DLTs, they use a lot of resources. Again, this will be a challenge. Currently, in the standardized technologies for wireless networks like the 5G, there are no such resources kind of discussed or provided for these technologies like DLT. Where would our DLTs or the blockchain technologies will they run, and how do we dedicate some of the spectrum or the bandwidth resources to them? So this is going to be one challenge, but of course we cannot avoid like the positive benefits of DLTs. One more challenge beside the other is that centralization also costs resources, and that's time and spectrum. If we use AI and we have to train the model in a centralized location, we have to send all the data. So this is going to consume a lot of spectrum and also resources, and it will be not so latency efficient. So time also is an important resource, and it will consume a lot of time. So to conclude, 6G will provide ubiquitous connectivity with ubiquitous security that needs the definition of omnipresent security. That requires the definition of distributed security architecture. Going beyond, somehow we have to break the existing 3GPP-based centralized security architecture, which must be sustainable by design. And that would require the definition of sustainable security, and what would be the KPIs of sustainable security, and what can be the key value indicators for sustainable security. So what I think is that the immediate and most interesting research challenge we are facing now is defining the potential security architecture that will fulfill the above needs. For example, thereof, it should be distributed, present everywhere, distributed, and sustainable by design. And there are some interesting references. This is security for 5G and beyond. We published this article in 2019. Then also another one, this is a short version, let's say, of the previous one. Then there is a book, Comprehensive Guide to 5G Security. It's also interesting. And then there are some articles on the 6G security, the roadmap to 6G security and privacy, and security and privacy for 6G, and this communication service and tutorials. And another one, security and privacy in 6G networks and this digital communication network. So these are interesting, some of the interesting references I found. So that's it from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ijaz, for your insightful presentation. Any questions for this presenter? Yes, there is one question. Andrew, can we get a microphone, please?
This is Andrew Ginter from Waterfall Security. I don't know. Can you hear me? I have a long question.
Can you hear? Yes. Andrew?
Yes, I can hear.
Sweet, thank you. Where to begin? I'm not a telecommunications person. I study other things, but I've heard the term data plane and control plane bandied about all of my career, and it's I've been in the business a very long time. In my dim understanding, many years ago, there might in fact have been separate network infrastructure that sent commands around that controlled the switchgear for, I don't know, voice communications. But in my understanding, I've heard the term applied to something as simple as, a handful of TCP ports on routers that are open, that exchange, routing information that might be, receive HTTPS connections to configure the routers. In the 5G and 6G space, when you use the term data plane and control plane, are you talking about, can you talk about how much security those two things give us? Are they in fact separate networks in some sense, or are they, really just a way to talk about different kinds of traffic, all of which is smashed together in the same network?
Thank you for the question. So first, let me take you there that if we talk about the 5G or 6G networks, what we kind of are interested in is that we consider it as a whole ecosystem. So first is let's say your phone connects to a base station, and then after the base station, it connects to a backhaul, and that backhaul has this it's usually connected through the fiber lines, and there comes the routers and switches. The separation of the data plane and the control plane, when we specifically it came with the concepts of this software-defined networking and it was mainly first focused on that one, the backhaul, where routers and switches are located. And it was, yes, I agree with, it was pretty much the kind of TCP, this kind of communication. So yes, the data plane and the control plane, they in the realm of these routers and switches use the same network, not different network for control and data information. So that was one, and yeah, if I understood your questions correctly.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think it's interesting that there are certain, the previous speaker was talking, there is no sort of separation between these things. It's kind of difficult to do the separation, and yet we talk about this hierarchical layer between data and control, and it's so, cybersecurity, it has an interesting dimension in terms of how do we handle this traffic. But thank you, Ijaz, for your time today. And any other questions? Yes, we have one more question.
Good morning. Thank you for a good talk. My question is, you mentioned the 6G security goes from a centralized model to a decentralized model. So the question is, how would like a user credential are decentralized, given a large amount of devices and user scenarios? So how would like a user authentication and authorization be decentralized? You potentially using some digital ledger technology like a blockchain. So do you have some comments on that? Thank you.
Thank you. So usually it will be very important to keep the user informations somehow centralized but connected. Those can be distributed, but it requires a lot of resources. So we cannot have a user information with each base station where there is a MAC node, for example, this multi-access edge computing node or some other edge node. So those will be, so in the initial kind of setup, we have to access those centralized systems where there's the user information stored. But for the rest of the security purposes, we need to decentralized. Actually, about decentralized, what I meant is that mainly to perform the security operations in a decentralized manner, not authenticating user in kind of like keeping user information in decentralized manners.
Thank you, Ijaz. I think we are on time for our symposium. Let's thank Ijaz for his time. And Ijaz, you will receive a plaque for your contribution for symposium. Thank you so much again for as part of your contribution for CARS symposium. Thank you.